They'll tell you I lost it, stole my grandma's money, and ran off to Europe like some villain in a Lifetime movie. What they won't tell you is what really happened that last Christmas morning in Kentucky, when I stood up in front of the tree, exposed every secret withdrawal, shut down the family's little money game, and walked out with a one-way ticket and a leather folder that ended us for good. You think your family's toxic? Watch this to the end. Then tell me if I'm the villain, or if I finally just chose myself. My name is Corinne. I'm 34 years old. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. I remember the first time I said that line into a cheap microphone in my tiny apartment. My hands still unsteady from the memory of that day. The thing about silence is, you start to hear everything. You hear the heater clicking in the walls, the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the ice settling on the roof. You hear the way people say each other's names and the way they carefully avoid yours. You start to notice which sounds are real and which ones are just people performing for each other. I heard the crinkle of wrapping paper, the clink of wine glasses, the fake laughs that filled the corners of my aunt's living room. I heard the sound of my name not being said. And louder than all of it, I heard that little voice inside me, the one that used to beg for their approval. Go silent. That voice had followed me from childhood classrooms to college dorms to every family dinner, whispering that if I tried harder, stayed smaller, gave more, they'd finally see me. That morning, it just stopped. It was like someone had finally turned off a radio that had been playing in the background of my life for years, because I didn't need it anymore. That Christmas morning in Lexington, Kentucky was bright and loud. Every window sparkled. The fake tree, 7 feet tall, was drowning in ornaments from Pottery Barn, gold and silver garland woven like it meant something. It didn't. From the outside, the house looked like the front of a holiday catalog. From the inside, it felt like a set I'd wandered onto by mistake, full of props and lines I was supposed to deliver and didn't believe in anymore. The only thing that meant anything that day was the box they hadn't noticed yet. The one hidden at the very back of the tree, behind all their designer bags and color-coordinated bows. I'd pushed it there myself before anyone came downstairs, my hand brushing glittery ribbon as I tucked it deep into the shadows where no one ever bothered to look. It had my name on it, written in black Sharpie, on plain brown paper. My handwriting looked small and plain between all the glossy tags and swirly fonts my aunt ordered from Etsy every year. It didn't look like it belonged under that tree any more than I did on that couch. No one asked me about it. No one asked me anything. Their eyes slid right past the brown paper the way their attention slid right past me in every conversation, only stopping on what was loud or shiny. My cousin Lindsay tilted her iPhone to record herself opening her Dyson Airwrap. She adjusted her angle toward the window, chin tipped up, already posing for people who weren't in the room. The box in her lap was an accessory. The real moment was happening on her screen. Lindsay. Thanks, Mom. Finally. She dragged out that last word like she'd been suffering without it, like this machine was the missing piece in a hard, tragic life. My aunt, not looking up, said, Aunt Melanie, we knew you wanted that. Her tone was smug and satisfied, the way it always was when she could point to something expensive and call it proof that she was a good mother. Love, in that house, often came with a price tag attached. Then I heard it. Cousin Jared. Who wrapped those? Trader Joe's? His voice cut across the room, a little too loud to be accidental. He jerked his chin toward my plain packages, eyes already waiting for the laugh. He was talking about mine. 3 gifts, all neatly wrapped in plain brown paper, tied with twine. I had wrapped them the night before at my kitchen table, folding each edge carefully, pulling the twine tight until it bit into my fingers. Simple didn't mean careless. It just meant I was done performing. Lindsay didn't even try to whisper. Lindsay. I mean, at least get a bow. We're not Amish. Her bracelets jingled as she tossed her hair back, her laugh bright and sharp, looking for an audience. She wanted agreement more than accuracy. She always had. My sister Dana smiled like she was trying not to. But I saw it. It was quick. The kind of smile you could deny later if you needed to. But it was there. She didn't repeat the joke. She didn't stop it either. That was always her way. Standing in the doorway of every conflict, just far enough inside to be safe. I didn't say a word. I could have reminded them who brought groceries when Dana's power got shut off. I could have pointed out that none of their designer bags would exist without all the little favors I'd done over the years. Instead, I let the words die in my throat. Silence, for once, felt like a choice instead of a cage. Because what they didn't know was that the final box wasn't for them. It was never for them. For once, I hadn't come bearing offerings to smooth things over or prove I belonged. I had brought something that didn't require their approval to matter. I kept my hands folded in my lap, watching them pass presents around me like I was furniture. Lindsay's boyfriend gave her diamond studs. Dana's kids opened iPads. My mom gave Jared a new set of golf clubs. Paper flew and piled up around my feet like slushy snowbanks. Thank yous were shouted over one another. Every gift transformed instantly into content and competition. I watched it all like I was behind glass, close enough to touch, entirely separate. Not one person handed me anything. Not one person said, "Corinne, did you get something?" The choreography was flawless. Call each other's names, gush over each other's gifts, skip right over the person who's always there and somehow never really in the picture. Even my mother looked right through me, like I was the ghost of Christmas disappointment. I'd seen that look my whole life. It was the look she gave when she decided I'd chosen wrong again. Wrong city, wrong job, wrong priorities, wrong life. She never said it outright. She didn't have to. They talked around me, over me, through me. Their words bounced off the walls and back again. Bonuses, flights, Facetune, a coworker's drama I'd never heard of and would be expected to remember. I sat in the middle of it all, my silence stretching wider with every passing minute. And I let them. Not because I had nothing to say, because I finally understood there was no sentence I could speak in that room that would make them see me differently. I was done spending energy explaining myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. Because I had one more thing left to open, the thing I had worked toward in silence, planned in silence, executed in silence. While they were loud about their lives online, I'd been quietly answering emails at midnight, taking interviews on my lunch breaks, signing documents they didn't know existed. Every "not much" I'd said when they asked how I was doing had been a small lie to protect a bigger truth. They thought my quiet meant I had nothing. But quiet people, we're the ones who watch, who plan, who don't announce a thing until it's already too late. They thought loud meant strong. They didn't understand that discipline usually whispers. By the time the results get loud, the work's already done. I waited until the last round of gift exchanges was done, until Dana finished her third mimosa, until everyone started posting photos and tagging each other with captions like, "Family is everything," even though none of them had spoken to me since Thanksgiving. I watched them huddle together for selfies, angling their bodies just enough to keep me out of frame, whether they realized it or not. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been my life. I waited until the tree skirt was littered with designer packaging, ripped ribbon, empty boxes, and all their performance was over. The living room looked like the aftermath of a sponsored haul. Branded bags everywhere, tissue paper crushed under expensive socks. The kids had already disappeared into another room with their screens, leaving behind crumbs and wrapping shreds. Then I reached under the tree and pulled the final box into my lap. The cardboard felt cool and solid under my palms. It was the only thing under that tree that held something they couldn't buy or borrow from me. The room didn't even notice at first. Someone laughed from the kitchen. Someone turned the music up a notch. My movement didn't register because it didn't fit the script they knew by heart. They were too busy arguing over who got more gifts from Grandma this year. Too busy performing for Facebook. Too busy being exactly who they always were. They listed amounts and dates like they were reading stats off a scoreboard, using my grandmother's name as a way to keep score long after she'd left the room. I untied the string slowly, folded the brown paper into a neat square, lifted the lid. I didn't drag it out. I just wanted to be fully present for the moment I'd been walking toward in quiet for months. Inside was a leather folder. Black. Simple. Clean. No logo. No initials. Nothing that would impress anyone in that room at first glance. Just smooth leather holding the proof that my life no longer depended on any of them. I opened it. And everything changed. The tree lights kept blinking. The playlist kept going. But in my head, the story I'd been telling myself about my place in that family came to a dead stop. My voice didn't shake. All the times I'd swallowed my words had taught me how to hold them steady now that I was finally ready to use them. Me. I wasn't trying to impress anyone today. I just came to say goodbye. The word goodbye hung in the air like something fragile and dangerous. We were not a goodbye family. We were a see you later, and then never call family. That's when the room paused. A laugh cut off midway. A phone stayed lit but unmoving in someone's hand. For a second, the only sound was the soft buzz of the heater. One by one, heads turned. Faces that had been focused on screens and boxes turned toward me like they were seeing a stranger. Lindsay's eyebrows pulled together. Dana's smile dropped. My mother's eyes narrowed, calculating. I stood. The carpet swallowed the sound of my steps, but inside, I felt like each movement echoed. I wasn't standing up to leave a room. I was standing up out of a roll. Still holding the folder in my left hand, my right hand reached in and pulled out a printed document. The signed offer letter from an international publishing house based in Amsterdam. The pages rustled softly. I remembered opening the email alone in my condo, rereading the offer 3 times to make sure it was real, then closing my laptop without telling a single person in that house. Me. This is the new job I accepted last month. I'll be creative director for a team that actually listens when I speak. The words creative director and listens when I speak sliced through the room more cleanly than any accusation. They spelled out exactly what had been missing here all along. They blinked. I could almost hear the mental scrambling. New job. Different country. No more last-minute babysitter. No more emergency bank account, with my name on it. I pulled out the second sheet. The notary stamp at the bottom glinted in the tree light, a small official circle that said every signature on that page was real. Me. This is the notarized sale agreement for my condo in Louisville. Closed this morning. In my mind, I saw the empty rooms again, the blank walls, the hook by the door where my keys used to hang. I'd handed them over hours before walking into this house. Dana sat up straighter but didn't say a word. She understood real estate better than anyone else there. She knew a closed sale wasn't a threat. It was a completed act. Then I pulled out the last page, the final transaction receipt. It was the thinnest piece of paper in the folder, but the numbers printed on it carried more weight than anything else in that room. Me. And this is the confirmation that I closed the shared family account, the one I set up for Grandma's care but ended up being drained for your 4th of July vacations and emergency Botox appointments. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The truth did the heavy lifting on its own. Silence. Real silence. Not the kind where I vanished and they kept talking. The kind where every person in the room heard the same thing and knew exactly what it meant. I heard Lindsay suck her teeth. Jared reached for his phone. My mother finally opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. I could see the familiar defense forming behind her eyes, the one about helping family and hard times, and, they didn't mean anything by it. I stepped on it before it could take a breath. Me. You don't get to play innocent this time. I have every withdrawal logged, every Venmo transfer, every receipt. I thought of the spreadsheet on my laptop. Dates and amounts lined up in neat rows, each one matching a post about a getaway or a self-care day they'd been so proud to share. Lindsay. Wait. What account? Her voice reached for confusion, but her eyes didn't. Her eyes were already sliding away, already searching for someone else to pin this on. Me. The one I opened with $40,000 from my inheritance, the one none of you ever contributed to. $40,000 my grandmother left me because I was the one who sat with her after her stroke, who drove her to appointments, who listened when she said she was scared of being forgotten. Dana. You never said it was just yours. There it was. The loophole she needed, the crack she could try to squeeze through to avoid looking straight at what they'd done. Me. No, I didn't, because I was stupid enough to think we were family. The word stupid burned a little in my mouth. Not because I believed I was foolish, but because it forced me to admit how many times I'd ignored the pattern. My voice stayed low, even, measured. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't pleading. I wasn't asking for anything from them ever again. No screaming. No tears. Just facts. Facts didn't care about how they framed things on Facebook later. Facts didn't bend around anyone's feelings. Me. This is the last Christmas I'll spend being ignored. There it was. The line in the sand. Not a threat they could talk me out of. A decision they were hearing after it was already made. I tucked the documents back into the folder. The leather closed with a soft final sound that felt louder to me than any slammed door I could have given them. Lindsay's boyfriend looked down at the floor. Jared muttered something I couldn't hear. My mother sat frozen like a porcelain statue. He suddenly looked like he'd walked into a story he didn't know the plot of. Jared's shoulders tightened, but his eyes still wouldn't meet mine. My mother's expression wasn't confusion. It was calculation. I didn't need applause. I didn't need them to understand. I had spent too many years chasing their approval like it was the price of admission to the life I wanted. That morning, I finally understood it was just another way to keep me small. I just needed to say it out loud, to make it real. There is a moment when an internal decision steps out of your chest and into the air. Once the words are spoken, you can't pretend you're still undecided. And once I did, something unspooled inside me. The tightness I'd called responsibility for years loosened, revealing itself for what it was. Fear of leaving what little I'd always known. Not relief. Not revenge. Relief would have meant I hadn't seen this coming. Revenge would have meant I still cared how much they hurt. Just clarity. Clarity that I was allowed to walk away. Clarity that I didn't owe them my future just because I'd given them so much of my past. I walked to the coat rack, grabbed my jacket, and slipped my arms into the sleeves one last time in that house. The hallway smelled like pine-scented plug-ins and wet boots, just like every winter of my childhood. But this time, it didn't pull me backward into old versions of myself. No one followed me to the door. No one asked me to stay, not even out of politeness. For half a second, habit made me pause, waiting for my name, for a hand on my arm, for any sign that losing me mattered more than losing access to what I gave them. Nothing came. The only sound was the wind outside, rattling the window panes. It howled against the glass like it was calling my name, reminding me there was an entire world beyond that living room and their small idea of who I was. And the click of the front door as I closed it behind me. That simple, clean sound drew a line between the life where I let them define my worth and the one where I finally learned to define it myself. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. The first breath I took outside that house tasted like cold air and something else. Something sharp and clean. Like freedom. The porch light behind me glowed over the snow-dusted steps, but the warmth from the windows already felt like it belonged to someone else. I didn't cry on the drive back to my apartment in Louisville. Didn't even blink too hard. I kept the radio low. Just the soft hum of old holiday music, the kind that tries to make everything feel warmer than it really is. The kind that sounds like it belongs to other people's memories, not mine. The roads were still salted from the snowstorm a few nights ago, but I knew them well. 23 exits back to a life I no longer owed anyone an explanation for. Headlights stretched out ahead of me in clean white lines, and for the first time in years, the highway felt less like a loop and more like an escape route. That night, I sat on the floor in my empty living room, surrounded by half-packed boxes and the echo of a life I was ready to leave behind. Cardboard flaps yawned open around me, like mouths mid-sentence that I had finally decided not to finish. It felt quiet, not lonely, just still. The kind of still you only hear after you finally stop arguing with yourself. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and stared at the document folder on the table. The steam rose in thin ribbons, curling between me and the proof that I had actually done it. My entire life had fit in there. My plans, my proof, my goodbye. Ink and paper where, for years, there had only been daydreams and what-ifs. And still, there was a small ache behind my ribs. Because leaving isn't the same as healing, and closure isn't a Christmas gift. It doesn't show up under a tree with your name on it and a handwritten tag. It's a decision you have to keep choosing. Every hour, every breath, every time you wish someone would just say, "I'm sorry." Every time you catch your mind trying to soften the edges of what happened, and you have to remind yourself, "No, I saw it. It was real. They didn't call. Not that night. Not the next day." My phone lit up now and then with random notifications. A sale from a store I didn't care about anymore, an automated email from the airline about my upcoming flight. But not a single name from that house appeared on my screen. Even when I posted a quiet update, a photo of my passport, boarding pass, and a copy of my new work badge. No one commented. Not a single congrats. Not even a fake heart emoji. Just a silent scroll past the biggest shift of my life. I didn't write a dramatic caption. Just 3 small words. New chapter started. The only people who reacted were coworkers, old classmates, people who had never asked me to shrink to make room for them. They were punishing me the only way they knew how. By pretending I didn't exist. They had done it in smaller ways for years. Forgetting to loop me into group texts, cropping me out of stories, telling each other news and letting it trickle down to me last. Now they were just doing it louder. But they didn't realize. That's exactly why I left. 2 weeks later, I handed over my keys to the realtor and stepped into my new life with one carry-on, one checked bag, and a folder of documents that had finally set me free. The door to my condo clicked shut one last time, and instead of sadness, I felt something in my chest quietly unhook. Amsterdam in January is gray and soft around the edges. The air feels like rain even when it's dry, but it's honest. It doesn't pretend to be anything else. You can smell the cold, feel the age of the cobblestones under your shoes, hear the bikes whirring past you in every direction. each one carrying someone who isn't trying to impress anyone. They're just living. No one there knew what I'd walked away from. No one expected me to explain. I rented a small flat near Vondelpark. One bedroom, tall windows, radiators that hissed like old cats when they turned on. The first night I lay in bed and listened to them tick and sigh, it felt like the building itself was exhaling with me. It was perfect. Not in the glossy magazine way, in the quiet, practical way. Enough space for my books, a small table for my laptop, a window that held a slice of sky that belonged only to me. The publishing house was exactly what they promised. Creative freedom, a team that didn't interrupt me mid-sentence, a manager who respected the word no. When I spoke in meetings, people looked up. They let me finish. They asked questions about my ideas instead of rushing to talk over them. Back in Kentucky, I was the quiet one, the artsy cousin, the woman who brought paperbacks to baby showers and didn't care about hair extensions or Hinge updates. They said creative, like it was a phase. Like I'd grow out of it once I found a husband and a subdivision. Here, I was just Corinne, and that was enough. No subtitles, no asterisks, no need to defend the way my brain worked. But then, in March, the first letter came, a heavy envelope with my mother's handwriting on the front. The ink pressed a little too hard into the paper, like she had to bear down to get the words to come out. No return address, just my name and my new apartment number. Seeing my address in her handwriting made my stomach dip, like missing a step on the stairs. I let it sit for 3 days on the kitchen table. I walked around it like it was something sharp, a small white landmine between the fruit bowl and the salt shaker. Every time I picked it up, my chest tightened, so I set it back down again. I couldn't touch it, couldn't even look at it without feeling my throat tighten. Because that letter was too late. Too late for the little girl at the kids' table. Too late for the teenager who stopped telling the truth because every feeling got labeled dramatic. And maybe I wasn't ready to read anything that started with Dear Corinne, like we were still pretending to be a family. When I finally opened it, the paper inside smelled like her perfume. That same too sweet floral cloud she always oversprayed before church. One breath of it, and I was back in our old hallway, watching her fix her lipstick in the mirror. The note was short. Mom, we didn't realize you felt so left out. I wish you had said something earlier. Christmas was a surprise. She underlined surprise, like the real problem was my timing, like the issue wasn't what they did, but how suddenly I stopped accepting it. Like I had ruined her holiday brunch by not performing the way she expected. No apology, no acknowledgement, just 3 sentences that proved she still didn't get it, still didn't see me. She saw a reaction, not the years that led up to it. I put the letter back in the envelope and tucked it into the back of the folder, the same folder I'd used on Christmas. The same one that now held the deed to a life that no one had handed me. I built it myself. Her words became just another document, filed under proof I'm not imagining this. The next letter came from Dana, then Lindsay, then my aunt. Each one more passive-aggressive than the last. Each one dressed up in concern but stitched together with guilt. Each one laced with phrases like, things got a little dramatic, and we were just joking, and you didn't have to be so extreme. They shrunk what happened down to a moment, a scene, a blip. They called me extreme for doing what they never expected, choosing myself, leaving without permission, and when silence didn't bring me back, they tried shame. Lindsay sent a message to my old email. Lindsay, you really think you're better than us now? You always were stuck up. We were trying to include you, and you made it weird. Her words crackled off the screen like they'd been waiting years to come out. I could almost hear her voice, that familiar mix of mockery and hurt pride. I stared at that sentence for a long time, not because it hurt, but because it was such a perfect summary of everything I'd spent 34 years trying to survive. The story had never been, "We hurt you." It had always been, "You're overreacting." They thought ignoring me was kindness. They thought performing closeness was love. They thought I should be grateful to be tolerated, grateful to be invited even when I was an afterthought. I didn't reply. Not to Lindsay, not to Dana, not to any of them. Because when people show you who they are, you can either argue or exit. You can spend the rest of your life sending them paragraphs trying to explain why you're bleeding, or you can stop standing where the knives are. I chose the door. And still, the silence grew heavier. By June, I learned through a mutual friend that my aunt had started telling people I'd had a breakdown, that I'd run off to Europe after a failed engagement. In her version, I wasn't decisive. I was unstable. They rewrote my story so they wouldn't have to sit with the truth. It was easier to tell people I'd snapped than to admit I'd simply reached a limit they never thought I'd enforce. But I didn't correct them, because they could only lie about me in rooms I would never return to. Living rooms where my name would be spoken over coffee and casseroles. Church foyers where "Pray for Corinne" was code for "We don't understand her choices." I wasn't there to hear it. And I didn't need to be. That summer, my career took off. The company promoted me. My name appeared in 2 industry magazines. I was invited to speak at a panel in Berlin. I stood on stage under hot lights, talking about story and voice and who gets to narrate your life. And the irony wasn't lost on me. Every win made their silence feel smaller, quieter, less like punishment and more like relief. Their absence became open space I could finally breathe in. Then, one afternoon in late August, I got a call. Not from them. From a lawyer. My grandmother had passed away. And there was a will. My chest tightened, not from grief, but from something colder. The grief had been slow, spread out over hospital rooms and fading memories. This was different. This was the metallic taste of knowing that money and blood and old resentment were about to collide. Because I knew exactly what was coming. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. The lawyer spoke slowly, like he was reading a weather report. Calm, neutral, careful. Lawyer. Your grandmother updated her will 18 months ago. You are listed as the primary beneficiary. His voice had that practiced softness people use when they're used to delivering bad news. Only this didn't feel like bad news. It felt like standing in a doorway I'd known was there, but never let myself open. I sat on the edge of my kitchen chair, phone pressed to my ear, my free hand resting flat on the table. The wood was cool, solid, real. The grain ran in quiet waves under my fingertips, a reminder that no matter what he was about to say, I was grounded. Here, in this life, I chose. Me. Primary. As in? The word felt strange in my mouth, like it belonged to someone else, someone more important, someone they would have never called the quiet one. Lawyer. As in her home, her savings, and the remaining trust assets. Your relatives received personal items only. He paused after only, letting it hang there between us. Personal items only. In that one phrase, I could hear the distant sound of doors slamming in my old hometown, conversations starting without me. The room didn't spin. I didn't gasp. I didn't even close my eyes. I had known. Not because Grandma ever told me. She never did. She was old school like that. Money was private. Wills were private. But other things weren't. I was the one who drove her to her appointments. The one who sat with her during chemo, handing her ice chips and pretending the daytime talk shows were interesting. I was the one who balanced her checkbook when her hand shook too badly to write, reading out each line item while she nodded and frowned in all the right places. I was the one who listened when she said she was scared to be a burden, listened when she whispered that sometimes the house felt too big, listened when she told me stories about growing up with nothing and how hard she'd worked to make sure none of us ever had to. While they were busy draining the account I set up in good faith, Grandma had been watching. Quietly, closely. She saw every emergency trip, every unexpected expense. She saw the way I always tried to explain it away, defend them, protect them. She noticed who showed up, and who only came when there was something to take. The lawyer continued. Paper rustled on his end of the call, like he was turning to another page. Lawyer, there may be contest attempts. We are prepared. I could picture him sitting behind a heavy desk somewhere in Lexington, files stacked around him, my family's last name typed neatly on a tab. I looked out the window at the canal, at the bikes passing by, at a woman laughing as she almost collided with a delivery truck. The sky was its usual Amsterdam gray, soft and low, reflecting off the water in dull silver. Life outside my window didn't pause for my inheritance. It just kept moving. Me. I trust you. I did. But more than that, I trusted her. Trusted that this was intentional. Thought out. A choice she made with both eyes open. That was the moment I felt it. Not victory. Not revenge. Closure. Not the cinematic kind with big speeches and music swelling in the background. The quiet kind. The kind that settles in your bones like warm tea. The kind that says, you are not crazy. You were not overreacting. Someone saw you. Someone believed you. The paperwork took weeks. International signatures. Certified mail. Probate filings through a county clerk back in Kentucky. Half my life now existed in tracking numbers and scanned PDFs. I signed everything from my small kitchen table in Amsterdam, my passport open beside me, my coffee going cold as emails kept landing in my inbox. Every time my cursor hovered over my name, I thought of her handwriting, the way she looped the G in her first name, the way her signature always tilted upward like it was climbing a hill. Now it was my name on the bottom line, my life, moving forward. They found out before I could tell them. News travels fast in small towns and slower hearts, faster than certified letters, faster than time zones. Dana called first. Her name lit up my screen like a warning, like the old smoke alarm in my childhood kitchen, screeching at the first sign of heat. I let it ring, watched it stop, ring again. I could almost see her pacing, phone tight in her hand, rehearsing the lines she was sure would pull me back into the role I used to play. When I finally answered, I didn't say hello. The silence on the line lasted half a second, then broke. Dana. What did you do? No greeting, no, how are you? Just accusation, raw and ready. Her voice was sharp, accusatory, like I had taken something that belonged to her and she was the wronged party. Me. I followed the law. I kept my tone flat. Not cruel, just steady. I wasn't going to add cushioning around a truth she had no problem stabbing straight into me. Dana. You manipulated her. You were always there. Of course she left it to you. There it was. The twist. The way care becomes a crime in the mouths of people who benefited from your absence, not your presence. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the wood press into my shoulder blades, anchoring me. Me. I didn't ruin her. I just stopped protecting her from consequences. The words surprised even me a little as they came out. Not because they weren't true, because I finally said them out loud. The moment I did, something lined up inside me that had been crooked for years. There it was. The crack. Dana's voice softened, just slightly. I could hear the fear behind the anger now. Fear of losing access. Fear of losing the version of me who could be guilted into fixing everything. Dana. We're family. That old word. The one they'd use like a leash every time I tried to step away. We're family. Said with a smile when they needed something. Said with a frown when I tried to say no. Me. Some betrayals don't leave bruises. Just silence. I thought of every time they'd left me out of plans. Every joke that landed just a little too hard. Every conversation I heard about myself secondhand. No fingerprints. No proof. Just a pattern you could feel in your bones. She didn't respond to that. She hung up. Just like that. No goodbye. No. We'll talk later. The line went dead. I stared at my reflection in the dark screen for a moment, then set the phone down. Lindsay sent paragraphs. Long ones, angry ones, accusing me of stealing memories, of erasing traditions, of tearing the family apart. She listed every holiday we'd spent together, like she was reading from a resume, every inside joke, every group photo. As if those moments were currency I now owed her interest on. In her version, I hadn't inherited a house and some money. I had set fire to history. I read them once. Let my eyes move over every line, felt each accusation press against me, looking for a soft spot. Then I archived the thread. No dramatic blocking, no fiery response, just gone from view. My mother waited a week. Her silence was not passive, it was tactical. She was not impulsive like Dana, not reactive like Lindsay. She always needed time to draft the version of herself she wanted the world to see. When she finally called, her voice was small, not weak, just measured lower, like she was trying on vulnerability the way she tried on dresses, turning in the mirror, smoothing the fabric, checking if it got the reaction she wanted. Mom, you could share it. That's what your grandmother would have wanted. There it was, wrapped in concern, tied with a bow of obligation. Not, how are you handling all this? Not, are you okay? Just, you could share it. As if my primary role in life was still to divide myself up and hand out pieces. I closed my eyes, letting the weight of her words sit on my chest for a second before I moved them off. Me. No. What she wanted was to be seen. I was the only one who did. I remembered sitting on the edge of Grandma's bed while she told me she hated the way the nurses talked about her like she couldn't hear. I remembered her asking me to adjust the curtains just so, because she liked to see the neighbor's oak tree in the morning. She didn't leave me everything because I was the best. She left it because I was there. Mom, so you're just done with us? She didn't say it like a question. She said it like a verdict she already knew the answer to, but needed to hear out loud so she could tell people later. She said she was done. I thought about Christmas, the brown paper, the laughter, the way they talked around me like I wasn't there, the way no one asked what was in my box until it was too late. Me. I didn't leave to punish you. I left to save myself. Silence hummed on the line. I could almost hear her blink, could almost see her sitting at her kitchen table back in Kentucky, lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't argue. That hurt more than if she had. If she'd fought, at least it would have meant there was something she wanted to keep. Instead, she let the sentence lie between us like a cracked plate no one bothered to glue back together. We said goodbye eventually. Polite, distant, like two acquaintances ending a call after rescheduling a meeting. When I hung up, my hand trembled just a little. Grief has a way of showing up in your body even when your mind feels clear. The house sold quickly. Of course it did. It was in a good neighborhood, with the kind of porch realtors like to call charming and old trees that arched over the street like they were trying to touch each other. Strangers walked through rooms where my childhood echoed. They saw hardwood floors and potential. They didn't see the chair where Grandma fell asleep mid-sentence. They didn't see me standing in the kitchen, 17 years old, arguing about colleges with my mother while the dishwasher hummed. The proceeds went into a trust I set up in my name only. No shared accounts, no access, no explanations. I spent hours on video calls with the financial advisor, asking questions I used to be too intimidated to ask. What does this mean long term? What happens if I do nothing? What happens if I'm brave? For the first time, my future wasn't a vague idea built around other people's emergencies. It was numbers and options and choices with my signature at the bottom. I donated a portion to a literacy foundation Grandma loved, quietly, without announcements. No posts, no tagged photos, no in loving memory speech on a stage, just a wire transfer, a brief thank you email, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that somewhere a kid would open a book in a small town library because of a woman who never finished high school but believed words could save people. The rest became my future. Not a safety net for anyone else, not a slush fund for we're family emergencies, a runway, a foundation, a yes. I could give myself later without asking anyone's permission. A year later, I stood in line at a small bakery near my apartment, the smell of bread warm and sweet in the air. The glass case in front of me was filled with crusty loaves and delicate pastries, each one more beautiful than the last. I had my usual order in mind: one small loaf, one almond croissant, a coffee to go. Simple rituals I had built in this new life, little anchors in a city that no longer felt foreign. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out, expecting a work email or a message from a friend about weekend plans. A message from an unknown number. Just a photo. My cousin's living room. I recognized the couch, the wall color, the angle. They hadn't changed a thing. The same tree, the same ornaments, the gold and silver garland, the staged perfection. Under it, brown paper packages. No glossy bows, no branded shopping bags. Just plain, crinkled brown tied up with string. A caption underneath. Lindsay, guess we're doing minimal now. No greeting, no explanation. Just a snapshot of a tradition she once mocked, suddenly rebranded as an aesthetic. I stared at it for a long moment. My thumb hovered over the screen. I zoomed in on the packages, noticing the careful folds, the way someone had written names in black marker on the tops. I thought about that Christmas, about my 3 brown paper gifts and the joke that followed, about how loud their laughter had sounded in my ears. I thought about the girl who sat on that couch and swallowed her hurt, about the woman who stood up and walked out. Then I smiled. Something inside me clicked into place. Not bitterness, not smug satisfaction, just a quiet understanding. They could imitate my rapping. They could copy my aesthetic. They could never replicate the work it took to become the person who didn't need their approval anymore. She smiled like I was the joke. I made sure I was the punchline instead. The difference now was simple. I no longer stayed in the room to hear the laugh. I didn't reply. No heart reaction, no sarcastic comment, no looks nice to keep the peace. I slipped my phone back into my pocket as the woman behind the counter called my number. I ordered my bread. Paid. Wrapped my scarf tighter around my neck. Then I stepped back into the street and walked home alone. The air was cool and damp, the sky low over the narrow buildings. Bikes passed me, bells chiming, people weaving around each other with the easy rhythm of a city used to making space. I walked through it all without shrinking, without apologizing for existing, not lonely, not forgotten, chosen. Chosen by my grandmother, yes, but more importantly, chosen by myself. I chose the job. I chose the city. I chose the boundary. I chose the version of family that didn't require me to disappear to keep the peace. And in the quiet of my small apartment, with its hissing radiators and tall windows, I finally understood. Their silence was not a sentence, it was an answer. And my life? It was no longer a reaction to their choices, it was my own. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.